Well, good morning, everyone. It is day 15 and it is Wednesday, the 15th of April. And good morning to you. Today's little study is all taken from 1 Samuel, chapter 7 and chapters 8, and it's entitled A King Like the Other Nations. Now, this is one of the most heartbreaking, if you like, stories in the Bible. God has done so much for the people of Israel. He's delivered them from slavery. He has fed and he has sheltered them in the wilderness. He has brought them to the promised land. He has cared for them. He has set judges in their midst to guide them. And in return, they reject God's rule in favour of a human king. God guides Samuel, who has been faithful to God over many, many, many years, to let the people make their own choice, even though they have been warned of the consequences of that choice. You see, when Samuel was a boy placed in the temple, Eli, the high priest, you remember him, don't you, and his two sons, he should have been more firm with the people of God. But he was hampered by those two sons, who were also priests, but they were rotten to the core. Now, history has a habit of repeating itself, doesn't it? And that Samuel's children were also just as bad. I've seen this in business many, many times when a father runs a successful business only for the next generation to wreck it. It's happened in recent times. Well, on top of this, the people went to Samuel and they said, look, we want a king, just like every other nation around us. We want somebody to govern us, to tell us what to do, to guide us and to direct us. And even though Samuel was saying, well, God does that, he said, no, but we want somebody, a physical king on a throne. That's what we want. You see, what made Israel unique was the fact that they were ruled by God. And every other nation knew this to be the case. Sideline God and you had a weaker nation with cracks in their defence. This suited the other nations. And Samuel told the people this, but to no avail. They wouldn't listen. And my friends, it is just exactly the same with us also. If you sideline God in importance in your life, imbalance starts to take over, because Satan will ensure that one becomes more dominant than the other, more time-consuming, more important, and eventually the potential to take over occurs if you're not careful. You can plaster over the cracks, you can plaster over the flaws, but if the foundations are weak and they're shaken, then there's danger ahead. And this was most definitely true of Israel. Yet this is also one of the most profound ways that God shows respect and love to God's people as well. God could have refused their request and continued to rule by the guidance of the judges. But whenever God gave us life, God gave us freedom to choose. And we do choose. We make choices every day. We make some good choices, some very bad choices. I've done that many a time. But our ability to choose is one of the most precious gifts that we have. We don't always get to choose what happens around us or to us. But we always have the power to choose how we will respond to what happens. One of the most difficult things for us to learn is how to let others choose for themselves too. Thinking of family, thinking of friends. For some reason, we tend to believe that loving someone means that we get to choose for them. Those of us with children will know of the mistakes that we make there. How often have you found yourself telling someone you love what to do or how to do it, which decision to make, all because we know better or we think we do? And yes, maybe we do know better. Maybe we can see down the road further than they can simply because we've been there ourselves and we've worn the t-shirt. It's still not our choice to make. It's theirs. Even when their choice has dire consequences, our job is to pray for them, to walk with them, to love them and support them in their choices and not be judgmental of them where we can, but to aid and abet them. best that we can. They will make mistakes. So will you and I. Theirs are their mistakes to make and their consequences to endure. And God knew what would happen if the people chose a human king. God let them do it. And he never stopped loving them. He never let them go out of his sight or out of his power. God never stops doing that with us either. Samuel warned the people that a king would demand more from them than they would want to give. He would demand their children, their money, their possessions. All of these things would become his, to be used at his whim. Their land, their very lives would all be under his control, to do with as and what and when he pleased. And they still said, "Give us a king." In the 1950s, post-war Britain had churches that were bursting at the seams. My own church of Ravenhill Presbyterian in Belfast boasted 998 children in their Sunday school. Imagine that. A church that could hold 1,300 people was packed every Sunday. 10 years ago, the Sunday school stopped and the average attendance was 80. Now it's starting to go back up again. Harold Macmillan, who was the British Prime Minister from 1957 to 1963, describing life in Britain, said, "Let us be frank about this. Most of our people have never had it so good." The churches were all packed and the decline started. And from that time on, our churches dropped their dependence upon God and it was switched to making the most out of life. And Jesus said to us, look, he said, "I have come to give you life, and life in all its fullness." What are you trusting in today? Will it guarantee you eternal life? Will it guarantee God saying to you, "Well done, thy good and faithful servant"? Friends, make Jesus King of your life and Lord of all that you do. It's a decision that you won't regret. And we can also say of ourselves, let's be frank about it, we've never had it so good with God on our side. The Lord bless you real good today.